The crack of gunfire echoed across the dusty plains as Garrett Xander pushed his horse to a gallop, the distant plume of smoke rising like a dark finger against the Montana sky. Something was wrong on the Stagecoach route, and being the only soul for miles in this unforgiving stretch of frontier, he knew it fell to him to investigate. It was 1876, a time when the West was still wild and untamed, its vast landscapes both beautiful and deadly. Garrett had been riding fence on the outer reaches of his modest cattle ranch when he spotted the trouble brewing on the horizon. At 32, he'd seen his fair share of tragedy in these parts: Indian raids, bandit attacks, and the unforgiving elements that claimed so many pioneers. His stallion, Thunder, needed little encouragement as they crested the hill overlooking the valley. Below, the Stagecoach lay on its side, one wheel spinning lazily in the air, the horses that had pulled it either dead or scattered. The driver was sprawled face down in the dirt, motionless. Garrett's jaw tightened as he urged Thunder down the slope, dust kicking up behind them. As he approached, he heard a child's cry, weak but persistent. Dismounting quickly, he tied Thunder to a nearby scrub oak and approached the overturned coach with caution, his Colt revolver drawn. These days, Stagecoach robberies sometimes included ambushes for would-be rescuers. "Hello, anyone alive in there?" he called, circling around to the door that now faced skyward. A woman's voice, strained and fearful, answered back. "Help us please, we're trapped." Holstering his gun, Garrett climbed atop the coach and peered down through the door. Inside, a young woman clutched a small child to her chest. Her honey-blonde hair had come loose from its pins, and a nasty gash across her forehead had left a trail of blood down one side of her face. The child, a little girl no more than 4 or 5, whimpered against her mother's shoulder. "Madam, I'm going to get you both out of there. Are you hurt bad?" Garrett asked, already reaching down into the coach. "My ankle, I think it's broken," she replied, wincing as she shifted. "But Lily here seems all right, just scared." "Pass me the child first," Garrett instructed, his voice gentle but firm. The woman hesitated only briefly before lifting the frightened girl toward him. Garrett took the child carefully, setting her down on the ground before returning for her mother. "I'm going to have to pull you up. It might hurt, but I'll be as careful as I can," he warned. She nodded, bracing herself. "I'm ready." With considerable effort, Garrett managed to extract the woman from the wrecked coach. She cried out in pain as her injured ankle was jostled, but bit her lip and endured it without further complaint. Once he had her safely on the ground beside her daughter, he took a moment to assess their situation. The driver was dead, looked like a bullet to the back. The strong box was missing, confirming Garrett's suspicion that this had been a robbery. The nearest town, Pine Ridge, was nearly 40 miles away, and with an injured woman, a young child, and only one horse between them, reaching it before nightfall would be impossible. "Madam, my cabin's about 5 miles from here. I think that's our best option right now," Garrett said, removing his bandana to gently wipe the blood from her face. "I'm Garrett Xander, Amelia Vaughn," she replied, her green eyes meeting his. "And this is my daughter, Lily." "Thank you for coming to our aid, Mr. Xander." Garrett nodded, then checked the Stagecoach for their belongings. He managed to retrieve a small carpet bag, which Amelia confirmed was hers. The rest of their luggage had been taken or scattered. "We need to move," he said, glancing at the sun. "Those bandits might circle back, and we don't want to be here if they do." Amelia attempted to stand but faltered immediately. Without hesitation, Garrett scooped her up into his arms, surprised at how light she felt despite her full-skirted traveling dress. "Mr. Xander, this isn't proper," she protested weakly, though she made no real effort to break from his hold. "Neither is leaving you to the wolves, Mrs. Vaughn," he replied simply, carrying her to Thunder. With some maneuvering, he managed to get her settled in the saddle. "It's Miss," she corrected quietly. "Lily's father, he's no longer with us." Garrett nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Vaughn." He lifted little Lily up to sit in front of her mother, then took Thunder's reins and began leading them toward his cabin, walking beside the horse. The child had stopped crying, though her eyes remained wide and watchful, darting between Garrett and the vast wilderness surrounding them. "Are you a real cowboy?" Lily asked suddenly, her small voice breaking the silence that had fallen over them. A hint of a smile touched Garrett's weathered face. I suppose I am, little one. I've got a small herd of cattle and everything. Do you have a sheriff's star? She pressed, curiosity momentarily overwhelming her fear. No, I'm afraid not. Just a regular fella trying to make a living off the land. Amelia stroked her daughter's hair, visibly relieved that the child was calming down. We're very fortunate Mr. Xander found us, Lily. Where were you headed? Garrett asked, keeping a steady pace despite the heat of the afternoon sun beating down on them. Billings, Amelia replied. I've accepted a position as a schoolteacher there. She paused, her expression faltering. I'm not sure what we'll do now. Garrett heard the uncertainty in her voice but didn't press. They had more immediate concerns than future plans. My cabin's just beyond that ridge, he said, pointing ahead. It's not much, but it's solid and safe. As they crested the hill, his homestead came into view, a sturdy log cabin with a small barn beside it, nestled in a grove of pines with a creek running nearby. A thin wisp of smoke still rose from the chimney where he'd banked the morning's fire before heading out. It looks wonderful, Amelia said sincerely, and Garrett felt an unexpected warmth at her approval. Once they reached the cabin, Garrett helped Amelia and Lily down from Thunder. He carried Amelia inside first, setting her carefully on his one comfortable chair, then went back for Lily and the carpet bag. The cabin was simple but clean, one main room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed against one wall, and a few shelves holding books and supplies. A curtained-off area in the back presumably contained storage. I'll need to tend to your ankle, Garrett said, stoking the fire back to life. And that cut on your head. Amelia nodded, trying to keep Lily occupied as Garrett gathered his medical supplies. The little girl was exploring the cabin, wide-eyed at the deer antlers mounted above the fireplace and the worn leather-bound books on the shelves. You read, Mr. Xander? Amelia asked, noticing her daughter's interest in his small collection. When there's time, he replied, returning with clean cloths, a bottle of whiskey, and some bandages. Winter nights get long out here. He knelt before her and carefully removed her boot, apologizing when she winced. Her ankle was swollen and beginning to bruise, but after gently examining it, Garrett was relieved to find it didn't appear to be broken, just badly sprained. This will sting, he warned, pouring a small amount of whiskey onto a cloth before pressing it against the cut on her forehead. Amelia hissed but remained still, her composure impressive. Thank you for doing this, for all of it. Garrett worked in silence for a moment, cleaning the wound and confirming it wouldn't need stitches. No need for thanks. Couldn't very well leave you out there. Nevertheless, we're in your debt. He wrapped her ankle tightly with the bandages, then helped her position it on a wooden stool. You and your daughter can take the bed tonight. I'll sleep by the fire. I couldn't possibly. It's no trouble, he cut her off gently. Now you both must be hungry. I've got some stew I can heat up. As Garrett moved about the cabin, preparing a simple meal for his unexpected guests, he found himself stealing glances at Amelia. She was beautiful, even disheveled from the accident, perhaps especially so, with her guard down and her hair falling loose around her shoulders. It had been a long time since he'd had company, longer still since that company had been female. They ate together at his small table, Lily's spirits improving considerably with food in her stomach. The child chattered about the stagecoach ride, innocently unaware of how close she'd come to a far worse fate. Amelia, though clearly exhausted and in pain, smiled at her daughter's animation, occasionally meeting Garrett's gaze with a look of shared understanding. As night fell, Garrett made up the bed with fresh linens for Amelia and Lily, then prepared a makeshift pallet for himself near the fireplace. The child fell asleep almost immediately, but Amelia remained awake, propped up against the pillows, watching as Garrett banked the fire for the night. May I ask why you live out here all alone, Mr. Xander? She asked softly, careful not to wake Lily. Garrett paused, not accustomed to sharing his personal history, but something about Amelia's gentle inquiry made him want to answer. After the war, I couldn't settle back into town life, he said simply. Too many people, too much noise. Out here, a man can hear himself think. You fought in the war between the states, he nodded. Union Army, saw things no man should have to see. He didn't elaborate and she didn't press him. And your family lost my pa to pneumonia when I was 16. Ma followed a few years later, no siblings, he shrugged. What about you? You mentioned Lily's father is gone. A shadow crossed Amelia's face. Thomas died of typhoid 2 years ago. We were living in St. Louis then. When the opportunity for the teaching position in Billings arose, it seemed like a chance for a fresh start. It still can be, Garrett said. Once your ankle heals, I can take you to Pine Ridge. The Stagecoach runs through there to Billings every Thursday. Amelia smiled faintly. You're very kind, Mr. Xander, Garrett, he corrected. If you're going to be staying under my roof for a spell, you might as well use my given name. Garrett, she repeated, and something about the way his name sounded in her voice made his chest tighten unexpectedly. Then you must call me Amelia. He nodded, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the moment, the two of them talking softly in the firelit cabin while a child slept nearby. It was a kind of domesticity he hadn't experienced in a very long time, if ever. You should rest, he said, breaking the spell. Morning comes early out here. Good night, Garrett, Amelia said, settling back against the pillows. And thank you again for saving us today. Garrett lay awake long after Amelia's breathing had deepened with sleep, staring at the wooden beams of his cabin ceiling. What had started as an ordinary day had turned into something else entirely. He had rescued a beautiful woman and her child from certain death, and now they were asleep in his bed, their presence transforming his solitary cabin into something that almost felt like a home. It was temporary, he reminded himself sternly. Soon enough, Amelia's ankle would heal, and he would take her and Lily to Pine Ridge as promised. They would continue on to Billings, and he would return to his solitary existence. But as sleep finally claimed him, Garrett couldn't help but wonder if perhaps the chance encounter might lead to something more. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the cabin's windows. Garrett had already been up for hours, having slipped out quietly to tend to his livestock and bring in fresh water from the creek. When he returned, he found Lily awake and sitting on the floor near the fireplace, playing with a small wooden horse he'd carved years ago and kept on a shelf. Morning, little one, he greeted her softly, mindful of Amelia still sleeping. Did you sleep well? Lily nodded, holding up the toy. Is this yours? It is, made it myself a long time ago. He set down the water bucket and knelt beside her. Are you hungry? The child nodded eagerly, and Garrett smiled, setting about preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush with dried apples and a bit of honey. As he worked, he felt Lily's curious eyes following his every move. Where's your wife? She asked suddenly, with the directness only a child could manage. Garrett nearly dropped the spoon he was holding. I don't have one. Oh, Lily considered this. My papa died, he got very sick. Your mama told me, I'm sorry about that. It's okay, I don't remember him much. She picked up the wooden horse again. Do you have a real horse I can see? Garrett couldn't help but smile at her rapid change of subject. I do. After breakfast, if your mama says it's all right, I'll show you Thunder and the other animals. A soft voice came from the bed. I'm sure she'd love that. Garrett turned to find Amelia awake, her hair tousled from sleep but her eyes bright. Something twisted in his chest at the sight of her. Good morning, he said, suddenly feeling awkward in his own home. How's the ankle? Amelia attempted to move it and winced. Still painful, but perhaps a bit better than yesterday. Mama, Mr. Garrett says he'll show me his horse, Lily exclaimed, rushing to her mother's side. That's very kind of him, Amelia said, smoothing her daughter's hair. But we mustn't impose on Mr. Xander more than necessary. It's no imposition, Garrett assured her, bringing over a bowl of the mush for Lily. And like I said last night, it's just Garrett. He helped Amelia to the table, careful not to touch her more than necessary, despite having carried her in his arms the day before. Somehow, in the light of day, such contact seemed more intimate. After breakfast, true to his word, Garrett showed Lily the small barn where he kept Thunder, his milk cow Bessie, and a few chickens. The child was delighted, especially when he let her feed the chickens, scattering grain while they pecked around her feet. Amelia watched from the cabin doorway, having insisted on at least standing up for a while despite Garrett's protests. Her smile as she observed her daughter's joy was radiant, and Garrett found himself repeatedly glancing her way. "She hasn't been this carefree in a long time," Amelia commented when he approached. "Not since before her father died." "Children are resilient," Garrett said. "And they live in the moment. It's a quality we lose as we grow older, I think." Amelia studied him with a thoughtful expression. "You're quite philosophical for a cowboy, Garrett Xander," he shrugged, a touch embarrassed. "Like I said, long winter nights gives a man time to think." Later, while Lily napped and Amelia rested her ankle, Garrett rode out to check on his cattle and scout the area for any sign of the bandits who had attacked the stagecoach. He found nothing concerning but remained vigilant. Those men had killed at least one person already. He wouldn't put it past them to track down potential witnesses. When he returned, he found Amelia sitting at the table with one of his books open before her, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. "I hope you don't mind," she said, looking up as he entered. "I was curious about what a cowboy reads in his spare time." "Help yourself to any of them," he replied, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "Though I reckon a schoolteacher has read most of what I've got already." "Perhaps, but it's always interesting to see which books a person chooses to keep. They tell you something about who they are." She closed the volume gently. "I wouldn't have expected sonnets." Garrett busied himself with removing his gun belt, unexpectedly self-conscious. "My mother taught literature before she married. Some of her books came with me when I headed west." "She would be pleased that you've kept them," Amelia said softly. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment neither spoke. There was a current between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Then Lily stirred on the bed, breaking the spell. The day passed quietly. Garrett hunted a pair of rabbits and showed Amelia how to prepare them for a stew, which they cooked together, while Lily drew pictures with a stub of charcoal on scraps of paper Garrett provided. The domesticity of it all should have felt foreign to him after so many years alone, but instead it felt oddly right. As they ate dinner, Lily asked, "Can we stay here forever, Mama?" Amelia's cheeks colored slightly. "Lily, we couldn't possibly impose on Garrett like that. Besides, we're expected in Billings." "But I like it here," the child protested. "And Garrett has horses and chickens and books." "Billings will have those things too," Amelia assured her, "and other children for you to play with." Garrett remained silent. Though he was surprised by the pang of disappointment, he felt at the reminder that their stay was temporary. He had known them barely a day, yet already the thought of his cabin returning to its former silence seemed unbearable. That night, after Lily was asleep, Amelia joined Garrett by the fire, hobbling carefully with the aid of a walking stick he had fashioned for her. "I'm sorry about Lily's question at dinner," she said quietly. "Children don't understand the complexities of adult arrangements." Garrett poked at the fire with an iron rod. "No need to apologize. It's natural she'd prefer somewhere with animals to a town she's never seen. Still, I don't want you to think we're—" She trailed off, searching for the right words. "Taking advantage," he supplied. "I don't. Truth be told, it's been nice having some company." Amelia studied his profile in the firelight. "Have you truly been alone all this time? No wife or sweetheart?" Garrett shook his head. "There was someone once, back in Pennsylvania before the war." He rarely spoke of Catherine, but something about Amelia made him want to share the truth. "She married another while I was fighting. Can't blame her, many men didn't return." "I'm sorry," Amelia said simply. "Ancient history now." He looked at her directly. "What about you? Has there been anyone since your husband passed?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Hardly. In St. Louis, I was still Thomas's widow, still wearing black and raising his child. Men weren't exactly lining up to court me." "Their loss," Garrett said before he could stop himself. In the flickering light, he saw Amelia's eyes widen slightly, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "That's very kind of you to say." An awkward silence fell between them, laden with unspoken feelings neither was ready to acknowledge. "I should check your ankle again," Garrett said finally, grateful for the practical task. "See how it's healing." He knelt before her and carefully unwrapped the bandage. The swelling had gone down somewhat, though the bruising had deepened to a vivid purple. Gently, he rotated her foot, watching her face for signs of pain. "Better," he pronounced, but you'll need to stay off it as much as possible for a few more days." Amelia nodded, acutely aware of his calloused hands cradling her bare ankle. His touch was professional, but there was a tenderness to it that made her breath catch. "Thank you for taking care of us," she said softly. "Most men would have done the minimum and been eager to be rid of us." Garrett looked up at her, his blue eyes serious in his tanned face. "I'm not most men." "No," she agreed. "You certainly are not." He rewrapped her ankle, his fingers lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary before he stood. "We should get some rest." Amelia nodded, accepting his help to return to the bed where Lily slept peacefully. As she settled beside her daughter, she watched Garrett prepare his bedroll by the fire, struck by the strange feeling that despite having known him only a day, she trusted him completely. 3 days passed in a similar rhythm, each bringing Garrett and Amelia closer through the small intimacies of shared meals, conversations by the fire, and the joint care of Lily. The child had taken to following Garrett whenever possible, peppering him with questions about everything from how to milk a cow to why the sky was blue. Rather than showing irritation, he answered each query with patience, even teaching her simple things like how to identify animal tracks and which wild berries were safe to eat. Amelia's ankle improved steadily, and by the 4th day she could walk with only a slight limp, though Garrett still insisted she use the walking stick. She had taken to helping with household tasks, discovering that, despite his bachelor status, Garrett kept a remarkably orderly home. "Where did you learn to cook?" she asked one afternoon as they prepared dinner together, Garrett showing her how to make biscuits in the Dutch oven. "Trial and error, mostly," he admitted with a slight smile. "First winter out here, I nearly starved because I couldn't make anything edible. By spring, necessity had made me halfway decent." "More than halfway," Amelia said. "These past few days I've eaten better than I did in St. Louis." Their hands brushed as they worked side by side and neither pulled away immediately. These fleeting touches had become more frequent, each lingering a bit longer than the last. On the 5th morning, Garrett announced that he needed to ride into Pine Ridge for supplies. "We're running low on flour and coffee," he explained over breakfast. "And I should telegraph the Stagecoach company in Billings, let them know what happened and that you're safe." Amelia nodded, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. The mention of Billings was a reminder that their idyllic interlude would soon end. "Is it safe to leave you and Lily here alone?" Garrett asked, concern evident in his voice. "I haven't seen any sign of those bandits, but still." "We'll be fine," Amelia assured him. "I can handle your rifle if necessary." At his surprised look, she added, "Thomas taught me to shoot. Said a woman alone should know how to protect herself." Garrett nodded approvingly. "Smart man, your husband." "He was," she agreed softly. Garrett left soon after, promising to return by nightfall. The cabin felt strangely empty without his presence, and Amelia found herself counting the hours until he would return. To keep busy, she and Lily cleaned the cabin thoroughly, then ventured outside to gather wildflowers to brighten the table. Amelia kept the rifle close at hand, but the day passed peacefully, the only visitors being a family of deer that grazed at the edge of the clearing. As the sun began its descent, Amelia felt a growing unease. Garrett should have been back by now. She had just decided to bring Lily inside when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Relief washed over her until she realized there were multiple horses, not just one. "Lily, inside, quickly," she ordered, grabbing the rifle and positioning herself in the doorway. 3 riders appeared at the edge of the clearing, rough-looking men with bandanas pulled up over their faces. Amelia's heart hammered in her chest. "The Stagecoach robbers." "Well, well," the leader called out when he spotted her. "Looks like we found ourselves a survivor." "Can't have that, can we, boys?" Amelia raised the rifle, aiming it steadily at the leader's chest. "You'd best ride on," she called back, fighting to keep her voice from trembling. "There's nothing for you here." The men laughed, spreading out as they approached. "Feisty one, ain't she? Wonder if she can actually use that thing." "You're welcome to find out," Amelia replied, cocking the rifle. The leader's eyes narrowed, and he drew his pistol. "Now listen here, lady." A shot rang out, but not from Amelia's rifle. The leader's pistol flew from his hand as a bullet struck it precisely. All heads turned to see Garrett approaching from the side of the clearing, his revolver raised and a cold fury in his eyes. "Next one goes through your heart," he called out, his voice deadly calm. "Now get off my property." The wounded leader clutched his bleeding hand. "You've made a big mistake, mister. We know where you live now." "And I know your faces," Garrett replied, moving to stand beside Amelia. "So do the authorities in Pine Ridge." "Telegrams already sent, with descriptions of you three and the Stagecoach robbery. Army patrols been dispatched from Fort Keogh. They'll be here by morning." The bandits exchanged uncertain glances, clearly weighing their options. 3 on 2 ain't bad odds, one of them muttered. "Look closer," Garrett said. "The lady's got you in her sights and she ain't shaking. I've got 6 shots and I don't miss. How many of you want to die today?" A tense moment passed before the leader spat on the ground. "Ain't worth it for a woman and brat. Let's ride, boys." They wheeled their horses around and galloped away, disappearing into the trees. Only when they were completely out of sight did Garrett lower his weapon, turning to Amelia with concern. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you or Lily?" Amelia shook her head, her legs suddenly feeling weak. "No, they didn't get the chance. You arrived just in time." Garrett took the rifle gently from her hands. "You held your ground. Most people would have panicked." "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I couldn't let them hurt Lily." Garrett's expression softened, and without warning, he pulled her into an embrace. Amelia stiffened in surprise before melting against him, the adrenaline of the confrontation giving way to relief. "I shouldn't have left you alone," he murmured against her hair. "You couldn't have known they would come here," she replied, reluctantly pulling back to look at him. "Did you really telegraph the army?" A small smile touched his lips. "No, but they don't know that. Sheriff in Pine Ridge is organizing a posse, though. Those men won't get far." "Mama." Lily's small voice came from the doorway. "Are the bad men gone?" Amelia turned, extending an arm to her daughter. "Yes, sweetheart. Garrett scared them away. We're safe now." Lily ran to them, and Garrett surprised Amelia by lifting the child into his arms. "You were very brave, staying quiet in the cabin like your mama told you." The little girl beamed at his praise, then looked between the two adults. "Are we a family now, like Tommy Jenkins and his new pa?" Amelia's cheeks flamed. "Lily, I've told you not to ask such forward questions." But Garrett didn't seem offended. He set Lily down gently, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Let's get inside. I brought back some sugar candy from town that I think a brave girl deserves." Later, after Lily had been put to bed with her treat, Amelia and Garrett sat by the fire, the day's events casting a new light on their situation. "I telegraphed Billings," Garrett said quietly. "The school board sends their regrets about the robbery, but says the position is still yours if you want it. Stagecoach runs on Thursday, as I mentioned before." Amelia stared into the flames, conflicting emotions warring within her. "Thank you for doing that." "Also bought you and Lily some necessities," he continued, nodding toward the packages he'd brought back. "Figured you'd need some things before reaching Billings." His thoughtfulness touched her deeply. "You've done so much for us already." A silence fell between them, heavy with words unsaid. Finally, Garrett cleared his throat, about what Lily asked earlier. Amelia shook her head quickly. "Please, you don't need to address that. Children say the most inappropriate things sometimes." "Do they?" Garrett turned to face her fully. "Or do they just say what adults are too afraid to admit?" Her heart began to race. "Garrett." "I know it's fast," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Known you less than a week. But Amelia, I haven't been able to think straight since I pulled you from that Stagecoach." She swallowed hard. "We barely know each other." "I know enough," he countered. "I know you're brave and strong. I know you love your daughter more than anything. I know you can quote Shakespeare and shoot a rifle. And I know that the thought of you leaving on Thursday feels like someone's ripping something out of me." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying?" Garrett reached across the space between them to take her hand. "I'm saying maybe Lily's question wasn't so inappropriate after all. Maybe you could consider staying, not as my guests, but—" He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "As what?" she pressed, needing to hear him say it. "As my family," he said simply. "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my wife, Amelia. I know it's sudden and I know you have plans in Billings, but yes," she interrupted, surprising herself as much as him. Garrett blinked. "Yes." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. "Yes, I'll stay, I'll marry you." As the words left her mouth, she knew with complete certainty that they were right. The position in Billings was just a means to an end, a fresh start for Lily and me. "But this," she gestured around the cabin, "this feels like where we're meant to be." Garrett's face transformed with a smile more radiant than any she'd seen from him before. He pulled her gently into his arms, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. "May I?" he asked softly. Amelia nodded, and his lips met hers in a tender, searching kiss that quickly deepened with the force of feelings that had been building between them since the moment they met. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I never believed in fate," Garrett murmured, his forehead resting against hers, "but I can't think of any other explanation for finding you in that stagecoach." "Perhaps some things are meant to be," Amelia agreed, her hand resting over his heart. "We'll need to ride into Pine Ridge tomorrow," Garrett said. "Find the preacher, make arrangements. Are you sure about this, Amelia? I don't want you to feel rushed." She smiled, feeling more certain than she had about anything in a long time. "I'm sure. Some decisions don't need months of deliberation. Sometimes, you just know." They were married 3 days later in the small church in Pine Ridge, with Lily serving as their only attendant, beaming as she scattered wildflowers before her mother walked down the aisle. The few townspeople who attended whispered about the whirlwind romance, but neither Garrett nor Amelia cared. They had found in each other something rare and precious, a second chance at love neither had expected. The telegraph operator in Pine Ridge sent word to Billings declining the teaching position with sincere regrets, explaining that Miss Amelia Vaughn was now Mrs. Amelia Xander and would be remaining in Pine Ridge County. Their return to the cabin now, their home, felt different. Garrett carried Amelia across the threshold despite her playful protests, while Lily danced around them, excited by the day's festivities and the candy the shopkeeper's wife had given her. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement, Garrett and Amelia stood together on the porch, looking out at the star-filled sky above their land. "Are you happy?" Garrett asked, his arm around his new wife's waist. Amelia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again." "I was thinking," he said, "come spring we might build on to the cabin, add another room for Lily, maybe more eventually." The implication made Amelia smile. "Planning for a larger family already, Mr. Xander." "If you're amenable, Mrs. Xander," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Very amenable," she whispered, turning in his arms to kiss him properly under the vast Montana sky. In the months that followed, the small homestead flourished under the care of not just one pair of hands, but 3. Amelia proved herself adept at ranch life, learning quickly from Garrett while adding her own touches to their home. She started a kitchen garden that soon produced more vegetables than they could eat, trading the excess with neighbors for goods they couldn't produce themselves. Lily thrived in her new environment, growing strong and tanned from days spent outdoors. Garrett taught her to ride a gentle mare he'd traded for, and she took to it naturally, soon racing across the meadow with fearless abandon. In the evenings, Amelia continued her education, teaching her to read and write at the kitchen table. Word spread about the schoolteacher who had settled on the Xander Ranch, and soon neighboring families began sending their children once a week for lessons. Amelia found herself with a small school after all, teaching in her own home rather than in Billings. The cabin expansion began in early spring, with neighbors coming to help raise the walls of what would be Lily's room. Community barn raisings were common, but Garrett was still touched by the show of support. He had lived so long in isolation that he'd forgotten what it meant to be part of something larger than himself. By summer, the cabin had nearly doubled in size, with a proper bedroom for Lily and a larger kitchen area where Amelia could teach her growing number of students. Garrett had even added a covered porch where they could sit in the evenings, watching the sun set over their land. It was on this porch, as August waned and the first hint of autumn crispness touched the air, that Amelia shared her news with Garrett. "I visited Dr. Thompson in town today," she said, her fingers laced with his as they watched Lily chasing fireflies in the twilight. Garrett turned to her, concern immediately evident. "Are you unwell?" Amelia smiled, squeezing his hand. "Quite the opposite. It seems our family will be growing again by spring." For a moment, Garrett simply stared at her, processing her words. Then his face broke into a smile of such pure joy that it brought tears to Amelia's eyes. "A baby," he whispered, his hand moving to rest gently on her still flat stomach. She nodded, covering his hand with her own. "A baby." Garrett pulled her into a gentle embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed. "A wife, children, a real family. After the war, I figured I'd live and die alone out here. And I never thought I'd find love again after Thomas," Amelia replied softly. "Life has a way of surprising us. Mama, Garrett, look what I caught." Lily called, running toward them with cupped hands. They broke apart, smiling as the child carefully showed them the lightning bug she'd captured, its tiny body glowing on and off in her palms. "It's beautiful, darling," Amelia said, "but remember what we talked about with creatures." Lily nodded solemnly. "They need to be free." She opened her hands, watching as the insect took flight, a small moving star against the darkening sky. "Goodbye, little light," she whispered. Garrett ruffled her hair affectionately. "Lily, your mother and I have some news to share with you." The child looked up expectantly, her eyes wide in the gathering dusk. "Come spring, you're going to have a little brother or sister," Amelia said, watching her daughter's face carefully. For a moment, Lily was silent, processing this information. Then her face lit up with excitement. "A baby." "Like Mrs. Peterson's new baby, that's right," Garrett confirmed. "You'll be a big sister." Lily threw her arms around both of them, her enthusiasm palpable. "I'm going to teach the baby everything, how to ride and feed the chickens and find the best berries." Amelia laughed, sharing a look of pure happiness with Garrett over their daughter's head. Lily had started calling him Papa about a month after the wedding, a transition that had happened so naturally that none of them had remarked upon it at the time. Now, it seemed as though they had always been a family. As winter descended upon the Montana territory, the Xander homestead stood warm and secure against the howling winds and heavy snows. The expanded cabin proved its worth during the long, cold months, giving them space to live comfortably despite being largely confined indoors. Garrett had prepared well, ensuring they had ample firewood stacked and preserved food stored. On the harshest days, when blizzards raged outside their windows, they gathered around the fireplace, reading aloud from Garrett's collection of books or playing simple games that Amelia devised to keep Lily's mind sharp. In the evenings, after Lily was asleep, Garrett would often sit with Amelia, his hand resting on her growing belly, feeling the movements of their unborn child. "What shall we name it?" he asked one night, as snowflakes as big as silver dollars drifted past the frost-covered windows. Amelia considered. "If it's a boy, perhaps after your father. You mentioned his name was Henry, didn't you?" Garrett nodded, touched by the suggestion. "And if it's a girl, I've always been fond of the name Grace," Amelia said softly. "It means blessing, which is what this child is." "Henry or Grace?" Garrett repeated, testing the names. "Both sound right to me." As her pregnancy progressed, Amelia continued teaching the neighboring children who could make it through the snow, though Garrett insisted she rest more as her time grew nearer. The baby was due in late April, when the worst of winter would be past, but in the isolated territory, both knew that complications could arise that would make reaching a doctor difficult. March brought the first real thaw, snow receding to reveal muddy ground beneath, and the earliest spring wildflowers pushing through the softening earth. Garrett expanded his cattle herd, trading with a rancher passing through for 2 pregnant heifers that would increase their small stock. Amelia's students returned in greater numbers as travel became easier, and she found herself teaching nearly a dozen children 3 days a week. The territorial governor had gotten wind of her informal school and sent word that if she continued, she might qualify for official recognition and even a small stipend from the territory's education fund. "Imagine that," Garrett said when she shared the news. "My wife, a real frontier schoolmarm after all," Amelia laughed, her hands resting on her very pregnant belly. "Not exactly what I envisioned when I set out for Billings, but so much better." The baby came in the midst of an April rainstorm, the steady drumming of droplets on the roof providing rhythm to Amelia's labor. Garrett had sent Lily to stay with the Peterson family when Amelia's pains began, then ridden through the rain to fetch Mrs. Peterson, who had experience as a midwife. For hours, Garrett paced outside the bedroom door, hearing Amelia's cries and feeling utterly helpless. The war had accustomed him to blood and suffering, but this was different. This was his wife, the woman he loved more than his own life, enduring pain he could not share or ease. Finally, as dawn broke and the rain gentled to a soft patter, a new sound filled the cabin, the lusty cry of a newborn taking its first breath. Mrs. Peterson opened the door, her lined face weary but smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Xander, you have a son." Garrett entered the bedroom on unsteady legs to find Amelia propped up against pillows, her face exhausted but radiant, cradling a small bundle wrapped in clean linen. "Henry," she said softly as Garrett approached, "come meet your father." With trembling hands, Garrett took his son, marveling at the tiny, perfect features, the shock of dark hair, the miniature fingers that curled reflexively around his large, calloused thumb. "He's beautiful," Garrett whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, returning the baby to Amelia's arms before leaning forward to press a reverent kiss to her forehead. "Thank you," he said simply, unable to find words adequate to express the depth of his feelings. Amelia smiled up at him, understanding in her eyes. "For what? For everything, for saying yes, for making me a father, for turning a lonely cabin into a home." "I should be thanking you," she replied softly. "You saved us that day, Garrett, in more ways than one." When Lily returned later that morning, her excitement at meeting her baby brother was boundless. She peered into the cradle Garrett had crafted during the winter months, her expression a mixture of awe and pride. "He's so tiny," she whispered. "Was I that small once?" "Even smaller," Amelia told her, smoothing her daughter's hair. "But you'll grow and so will Henry." "I'll help take care of him," Lily promised solemnly. "I'll be the best big sister ever." As spring blossomed into summer, the Xander family settled into a new rhythm with baby Henry at its center. The child thrived, growing strong on his mother's milk and the fresh Montana air. Garrett found himself constantly amazed by his son's development, the first real smile, the first time he rolled over, the first laugh that bubbled up unexpectedly during a game of peekaboo. Amelia resumed her teaching with renewed vigor, Henry often sleeping in a basket nearby while she conducted lessons. The Territorial Education Board made good on their promise, providing a small but welcome stipend that allowed them to purchase books and supplies for the growing number of students. Garrett expanded their herd further and built a larger barn, his dreams for the ranch growing alongside his family. He hired a local boy, 16-year-old Caleb Miller, to help with the cattle, teaching him the business while providing the fatherless youth with much-needed income for his own family. One warm evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily playing with her doll in the yard while Henry slept against Amelia's shoulder, Garrett reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. "It's been just over a year since I found you in that overturned stagecoach," he said, his voice low with wonder. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how much has changed." Amelia leaned against him, her free hand finding his. "Do you ever regret it?" Taking in two strangers, tying yourself to a ready-made family, Garrett turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. "Regret? Amelia, finding you and Lily was the best thing that ever happened to me. Before you, I existed. Now I live." She smiled, pressing a kiss to his weather-roughened cheek. "I feel the same way. When Thomas died, I thought that chapter of my life was over, that I would be a widow raising my child alone forever. I never expected to find love again, especially not in such unlikely circumstances." "Life has a way of surprising us," Garrett said, echoing her words from months before. "When I rode out that day and saw the smoke from the stagecoach, all I was thinking was that someone might need help. I never imagined I was riding toward my future wife and daughter." "Perhaps it was Providence," Amelia suggested. "Or fate, as you said before." "Whatever it was, I'm grateful," Garrett replied, slipping his arm around her waist. "Every day I'm grateful." As dusk deepened around them, Lily came running up the porch steps, her small face serious. "Papa, can we have a story before bed? The one about how you rescued Mama and me," Garrett chuckled, lifting her onto his lap. "Again, you've heard that one 100 times, but it's my favorite," Lily insisted. "Please?" "Very well," he conceded, unable to resist her pleading eyes. "Once upon a time, not so very long ago, I was riding fence on a hot summer day when I saw smoke rising in the distance. Amelia watched as her husband recounted their beginning, embellishing certain parts to make them more exciting for Lily while keeping the essence of the truth intact. Henry stirred against her shoulder, his tiny hand clutching at her dress, and she felt a wave of contentment wash over her. From tragedy had come joy, from chance had come purpose, from rescue had come love. The stagecoach crash that could have ended her life had instead given her a new one, richer and fuller than she could have imagined. As Garrett finished the story, Lily's eyes were heavy with approaching sleep. "And then you carried Mama all the way to the cabin, just like a knight in a fairy tale," she murmured. "That's right," Garrett confirmed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Just like a fairy tale." "And we all lived happily ever after," Lily added, her voice trailing off as she nestled against his chest. Garrett met Amelia's eyes over their daughter's head, love shining in his gaze. "Yes," he agreed softly, "we certainly did." In the years that followed, the small homestead that had once housed a solitary cowboy grew into a thriving ranch and a center of community life. Amelia's informal school eventually became the official Pine Ridge School, with a proper building constructed on the edge of their property through community effort. Lily grew into a confident young woman with her mother's intelligence and her adoptive father's love of the land. Henry developed into a sturdy boy who followed Garrett everywhere, learning the ways of ranching from his earliest days. 2 more children joined the family: Grace, born 2 years after Henry, and Michael, who arrived 3 years later, completing their family. The Stagecoach Company eventually constructed a proper road that passed near their ranch, making travel to Pine Ridge and beyond easier. Garrett served as county commissioner for a term, helping to bring law and order to the still wild territory, while Amelia's educational efforts earned recognition from as far away as Washington. But through all the changes and growth, they never forgot how their story began with a chance encounter on a dusty road, a rescue born of simple human decency, and a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Garrett presented Amelia with a special gift: a small wooden stagecoach, intricately carved by his now skilled hands. "To remind us," he said as she turned the perfect miniature over in her hands, "that sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best." Amelia set the carving on their mantelpiece, where it would remain for decades to come, a symbol of their extraordinary journey. "I think about it sometimes," she admitted, standing in the circle of his arms, "what might have happened if you hadn't come along that day. If another rider had found us or none at all." "I don't," Garrett said simply. "Because from the moment I saw you in that overturned coach, there was no other path for me. Finding you and Lily wasn't chance, Amelia, it was destiny." As the sun set on their 10th year together, casting golden light through the windows of the home they had built, Garrett and Amelia stood surrounded by the evidence of their shared life: children's laughter from the yard, books lining shelves that had once held only a few volumes, photographs capturing moments both ordinary and momentous. From the ashes of tragedy, they had forged something beautiful and enduring: a family, a legacy. A love story that had begun with a rescue on a lonely Montana road and had grown into something neither could have imagined when their paths first crossed. And as Garrett kissed his wife in the warm light of their home, both knew with absolute certainty that every step of their unlikely journey had led exactly where they were meant to be together, bound by love that had begun in crisis, but had flourished in the peace and purpose they had created together. In the end, it wasn't just Garrett who had rescued Amelia and Lily that fateful day. In saving them, he had also saved himself, finding in their love the home his solitary heart had always sought but never found. And in that truth lay the greatest beauty of their story, that in reaching out to help others, we often find the healing we ourselves need most. As night fell over the Montana wilderness, stars appearing like diamonds in the vast sky above their ranch, the Xander family gathered together, their lives forever intertwined by chance, choice, and the enduring power of love that had transformed them all.